Rama, Hare. Okay. Okay, devotees, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Right. Okay, so devotees, we are in the 51st? 53rd, sure, sorry. So tonight's the 53rd evening of Bhakti Vaibhava, Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're just going deeper and deeper into the ocean of nectar. It's a fact. So we are this evening, let's see, we're still in the 13th chapter. Where are we? 23, okay. 13th chapter, verse 23. Let me get myself organized here. But we can start with our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So devotees, we are in the 13th chapter. Dhritarashtra quits home, and we're in sort of in the middle or somewhere in the second section. Vidura preaches to Dhritarashtra, which goes from verse 17 to verse 28. And we are this evening to begin with verse 23. And this is such a powerful part of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's just sure. Obviously, it's a huge wake-up call for Dhritarashtra, but it's a wake-up call for all of us, actually. Because how easy is it to get attached to hearth and home and comfort and just everything, quote-unquote, nice. And in this way get distracted from Krishna consciousness. So, all right, verse 23, this is Vidura speaking. Alas, how powerful are the hopes of a living being to continue his life. Verily, you are living just like a household dog and are eating remnants of food given by Bhima. Yes, so Let's have a look at the purport here. And Srila Prabhupada's making the point, first of all, that a sadhu, a real sadhu, doesn't just flatter people so that they think he's nice and then give him financial support or something of that sort. They have to speak the truth. Sometimes the truth is nice. Sometimes the truth may seem not nice. It's always nice, actually. It's just our minds may think that it's nice or not nice, depending on what our perspective on life is. So, Dhritarashtra, he's in such a position, as the verse says, that it's such an embarrassment. I mean, it should be such an embarrassment. But he doesn't feel embarrassed, or he has not felt embarrassed. He's more or less happy enough to carry on being treated as if he's important, even addressed as, "O King, Rajan." But he's definitely not the king. Yudhisthira is very much the king, and he's actually running things. But Yudhisthira is such a gentleman, really, that he keeps flattering. Dhritarashtra doesn't want to disappoint him, because Dhritarashtra's already gone through this great just disaster in his life. All of his children were killed in the battle, all 100 of them. And there were some grandchildren also, they were killed. So Yudhisthira is very sensitive in that way. So, but anyway, the thing is, Vidura, he's pointing out this point. What a point. You're living like a household dog, eating the remnants of food left by Bhima, who you on a number of occasions tried to kill. And now you're just like a dog. Dog may sit down by the table and the master may throw some foodstuffs down just for the dog. And the dog thinks, "Oh, very nice." But the dog, anyways, is down. So, but that's the situation. He should feel too embarrassed. It should be intolerable, actually. And a little further on, I read on over the weekend. I was reading on a bit. And Srila Prabhupada makes the point, a little further on in the same chapter, that in a certain sense, it would have been better if he died at the same time as his sons, because his life is just not worth living. Yeah, it's just pathetic. It's pathetic, that's the term really. So Vidura, Prabhupada says, Vidura is astonished. How powerful is the urge to just continue living even under most hopeless circumstances. Yes. And, it's an interesting philosophical point. The fact that people have this desire to just continue living and continue living and continue living. In most cases, that they never come to the point of saying, okay, my life's over, I'm just going to lie down and die. They keep pushing on one way or the other. So Prabhupada makes the point that the sense of life continuing, that it should continue, it could or it can continue, even when on the physical level it's pretty clear that it can't really continue. This at least indicates our eternal natures. If we didn't have eternal natures, if we were these bodies, then death would be so natural, totally natural, that as the time of death is coming, people would say, okay, that's fine. But they don't say that's fine. They try to contradict the nature of the body. Yeah, by just trying to continue to live by all means. But, that indicates their stupidity, of course, but it also indicates the fact that life is eternal. And Prabhupada explains, of course, as he has on a number of occasions, that this human body is a special opportunity in that regard, to become self-realized, to go home back to Godhead. But the vast, vast, vast majority of people, they don't try to make arrangements like that for going back to Godhead. Like Dhritarashtra, they just try to make arrangements to keep on living. Despite anything, doesn't matter, whatever it is, let's just keep on living. So therefore Dhritarashtra, of course he's physically blind, but in different places reference is made to the fact that he's spiritually blind too. Dhritarashtra, spiritually, completely blind, lost. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, we can just imagine how responsible a task is entrusted to a sadhu like Mahatma Vidura. Yeah. Because, obviously, even though the Pandavas, they're fully knowledgeable spiritually, but they just can't do it with Dhritarashtra. They just can't confront him and just tell him, listen, stop this, you got to wake up. They can't do it. So Vidura, though, he's doing it because he's a sadhu, and that's the business of a sadhu. So verse 24, Vidura continues, there is no need to live a degraded life and subsist on the charity of those whom you tried to kill by arson and poisoning. You also insulted one of their wives and usurped their kingdom and wealth. What has Dhritarashtra not been a party to in terms of abuse and just terrible abuse of the Pandavas? But then he just turns around and here I am, look after me in all respects, thank you. Like it's okay, it's normal, but it's not normal. Right. So Srila Prabhupada gives some general preaching here, purport. Talks about the system of varnashram. The real social system means a social system which prepares you for your final years for self-realization. And even when you're young, and young people, they play a lot. And even when you're an adult and you're in household life and you got your wife or your husband and some children, and these types of material enjoyment are there. But still, it's all part, and it's, if it's presented properly, and if the ongoing training is done properly, that even through childhood and even through the grihasta phase of life, it's always clear we're moving in the direction of self-realization. Not just suddenly at the end of life, whoa, what happened? You mean I got to become self-realized now? Oh boy, didn't know about that. No, it's all part of that process. Yes, but people like Dhritarashtra, they don't know that, so they stay at home and just try to, in his case, even in a degraded condition of accepting charity from enemies. It's amazing. So, interesting point. 5,000 years ago, there was one Dhritarashtra. Now, in 2022, September the 12th, how many does Prabhupada say? There are Dhritarashtras in every home. That's the fact. Male and female Dhritarashtras. And they're training up youngsters to become Dhritarashtras. Yes. And Prabhupada talks about the politicians, especially the politicians. I mean, maybe you're not even aware, which would be quite good actually, but Queen Elizabeth just died. And she's a classic case, 96 years old, And I mean, she was very sort of skilled in being nice, basically, and small talking with people, in generally pretty inconsequential ways. But it would have been a good idea for her to step aside. Some of these kings just a few years ago, I think in Holland or Belgium, the king or maybe queen, stepped aside, although she was nowhere near 96 years old. Yeah. But the queen, what a typical example. Just carry on, until you literally drop. And Mr. Mugabe in Zimbabwe, same story, till he dropped. So, either till they're dragged away by death, meaning they just have a heart attack or something, or they're killed by the opposition. It's Kali Yuga. It really is. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, to stick to family life to the end of one's human life is the grossest type of degradation. And there's an absolute need for the Viduras to educate such Dhritarashtras, even at the present moment. Okay, Viduras, get it, got it. And the female Viduras, yeah, sure. Right, okay. Righto, so we go on to verse 25. Yeah, verse 25. First Canto, chapter 13, verse 25. despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. To the point, isn't it? He's really to the point. So Srila Prabhupada, very philosophical, he begins the purport by distinguishing between the Kripanas and the Brahmanas. Well, in the actual verse, Kripanasya jijivasho. Yeah, Kripanasya, you're a Kripana. There's Kripana and Brahmana. And Prabhupada explains the Kripana is miserly in all respects, not just financially, but in all respects. Whereas the Brahmana has, well, a true estimation, true understanding of himself and what's the material body, and does not have high expectations for the material body. You know, if any of you have high expectations or moderately not low expectations from your material bodies, just wait till you're 71. I tell you what, gee. Okay, so such is life. Elsewhere, Srila Prabhupada, there's a purport and a class where, and you know, offhand I just don't know the verse reference, but Srila Prabhupada talks about Kripana and Brahmana. And Kripana, miser, there Srila Prabhupada says Kripana is narrow-minded. So narrow, he only sees himself. And the Brahmana is broad-minded, very broad-minded, so broad, basically sees everyone, and ultimately sees Krishna. Yeah, Kripana and Brahmana. 2.7. Wow. We've got a Shastri here. Thank you. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 7. Right, so anyway, the Kripana, Prabhupada says, is miserly and has no estimation of his material body, whereas the Brahmana understands what's my material body, what's its value, and what my expectations should be for it. Yeah, so the Kripana then, on the basis of this wrong estimation, the estimation of the Kripana about the material body basically is, this is just a wonderful place for enjoyment. Oh, I will eat, drink, be merry in so many ways with this body because it's great. It's just specially designed for those purposes. But little do they know. I mean, they don't really notice so much. Somehow they overlook the fact that the body gives so many problems. You know, there's a saying, they say it's from Russia, but I haven't heard it there. There is a saying that hunger is the best chef. The more hungry you are, the better the prasadam tastes. Yeah. Because, I mean, you may have had experience when you're just not hungry. I mean, when you have just filled yourself to beyond the limit, even they bring your favorite preparation. At best you could have just a little nibble. At worst you won't be able to deal with it. So they say hunger is the best chef. But consider this. So there you are, you're hungry. Somehow or other you can't eat. There's just no food around and you've got no access at all. So you're forced into a position of hunger. But that hunger is not nice. It's not nice. I mean, if you're really hungry, it's quite uncomfortable. And so then, but hunger is the best chef, because then even your least favorite, most unfavorite prasadam tastes really good. I don't know, what's your least favorite prasadam? That's mine too, jackfruit. I tell you, I'd have to be on the edge of starvation. Gee whiz. Don't ask me why, but anyway. So anyway, so you're hungry maybe for hours. And then finally you get something to eat. And, they say it tastes especially good. But how long are you going to eat? 20 minutes, half an hour is a long time. 15, 20 minutes is normal. And that's the enjoyment, 15, 20 minutes or something. Having suffered the pangs of hunger for some hours. But sometimes the people, they don't notice that, I'm feeling hungry and it's not nice. They just sort of overlook it, tolerate it, with the thought, I am going to eat shortly and it will be especially nice. In New Vrindavan, I don't know if they still do it, but there was a devotee. He produced a regular newsletter, maybe monthly, and it was called Confessions of a Prasadam Addict. I read a few editions of it, years in the 70s. And he, on Monday, would be a report what the Sunday feast was like. And then predictions about what the next Sunday feast was going to be like. So he would sort of survive till Wednesday, remembering the previous Sunday feast, and then survive from Wednesday, looking forward to the next one. And it was all, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I think you get the idea. So they overestimate the capacity of the material body to give enjoyment. So the Kripanas want to enjoy sense gratification with his utmost strength. And even in old age, he wants to become a young man by medical treatment. So Dhritarashtra is a classical Kripana because he wants to just live in his material body at any cost. Yeah. Vidura is trying to open his eyes. Dhritarashtra, Prabhupada says, Dhritarashtra has spoiled 80% of his energy, so he should use the remainder of his life for something worthwhile. Yeah. So at the end there, Prabhupada says, such a life is called miserly because one cannot utilize the assets of the human form of life. And Prabhupada concludes the purport, Only by good luck does such a miserly man meet a self-realized soul like Vidura, and by his instructions get rid of the nescience of material existence. Right, so we're getting to the end of Vidura's instructions to Dhritarashtra. In fact, they do finish. 27's the last verse, I think. Is it 27? Anyway, it's coming up. Anyway, okay, let's carry on. So, Vidura continues, verse 26. He is called undisturbed who goes to an unknown, remote place and freed from all obligations, quits his material body when it has become useless. Yeah. Okay, so Prabhupada quotes Narottam Das Thakur. What's the song? Hari Hari Bipale, Janama na Gainanu. Yeah. My Lord, I've simply wasted my life. Having obtained the human body, I've neglected to worship your Lordship, and therefore I've willingly drunk poison. That reminds me of Vidyara Vilasa of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in which he says that in my youth I thought I must study and become qualified. So I did. But all the studying simply turns you into a donkey. And he says, so my Lord, here is one donkey. I mean, basically to that effect. Here is one donkey now coming before you. Please be merciful. Yes, so again, Prabhupada preaching that the fact is, in other words, the human body is especially meant for devotional service. Knowledge of Krishna consciousness, without which life is just a big garden full of anxieties and miseries. So therefore, even if you've spoiled your life so far, like Dhritarashtra, I mean, he was a grandfather. I mean, the pictures you see, he must be 70 at least, something like that, or 80. Something like that. So much of his life is wasted. But even if you have wasted so much of your life, then don't let it stop you from just taking up Krishna consciousness. Yeah. One devotee Sanskrit teacher in Vrindavan was telling me years ago, in the early 90s, he was teaching a class, a Sanskrit class, to some people. And one elderly man came, like really elderly, well into his 70s, and, physically struggling a bit. And so this devotee asked the man, why are you learning Sanskrit at this age? And the man said, for my next life. He was assuming or hoping he would take birth in the same way and carry on. Yeah. So, yeah, even if you've wasted your life so far, then at least now, it's never too late to just take to Krishna consciousness and get out of your nonsense situation. Yeah, go to a place where nobody knows where you are and just give up your body there with no fanfare. Yeah. So one should become dearer. One should become dearer, a sober, tolerant person who's not disturbed, even when there's provocation. Yeah. Self-realization is obstructed by undue affection for family. And if anyone is at all able to forget such a relation, he is called undisturbed or dearer. So we all devotees, we should really become dearer. Right? We should all of us, we should become dearer. It's a fact. So that even when materially, difficulty is there, we don't become disturbed and bewildered and start crying. Yes, okay. So the way Vidura's putting it, Srila Prabhupada explains, towards the end there, that he says, this is the path of renunciation based on a frustrated life. But stabilization of such renunciation is possible only by association with bona fide saints and self-realized souls, by which one can be engaged in the loving devotional service of the Lord. Yeah, so the thing is that Vidura understands, I can't make this man into a real devotee. He's just not got the capacity, he's not ready for it sufficiently. But at least I can get him to renounce and get out of this hole in the ground that he's dived into. At least I can get him to become renounced, and that'll be good. That'll be good, spiritually. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport. Dhritarashtra was lucky enough to have a brother whose very association was a source of liberation for his frustrated life. See, the thing is, Dhritarashtra should have been frustrated, but he wasn't, because he didn't even have the brains to become frustrated. Yeah. Prabhupada, it's a somewhat different example, but, it's not unrelated. Srila Prabhupada gave the example of a monkey and the special trap, monkey trap. It's a very simple arrangement. It's just like a sort of a cage with a hole in the top that the monkey's paw can go through, and inside the cage is a banana. So the monkey puts his hand in, grabs hold of the monkey, of the banana, so, just in the middle of the banana, sticking out on both sides. And now he tries to pull his hand and the banana out of the cage, but the banana gets caught because the hole is just big enough for his paw. And then the hunter comes to catch him or kill him or do whatever he's going to do with him. But the monkey, all he's got to do is let go, and his hand will come out. But the monkey sees here comes the hunter. He keeps on trying to pull the banana out until, whatever's the hunter's going to do happens. Yeah, pretty stupid. That's attachment. Yeah. Till death do us part. Right. So, let me just continue. Oh, okay. Right, so we go on to verse 27, right? He is certainly a first-class man who awakens and understands either by himself or from others the falsity and misery of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing within his heart. Yes, so Srila Prabhupada goes into a profound philosophical discussion. 3 classes of transcendentalists. 3 classes. That number 1 is the Dhira, someone who's not disturbed by being away from family association. 2, a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life, who's renounced on the basis of frustration. And 3, a sincere devotee of the Lord, who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting, and leaves home depending completely on the personality of Godhead who resides in his heart. So anyway, and Prabhupada goes on, the idea is that the renounced order of life after a frustrated life of sentiment in the material world may be the stepping stone on the path of self-realization. That's what's going to happen with Dhritarashtra. Vidura sees this as a stepping stone, that in frustration, seeing the reality of his pathetic situation, in that frustration he'll renounce, and it'll be a stepping stone for future further advancement. But then Prabhupada goes on, of course, in the italics. But real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one is practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. So Dhritarashtra is not on that level. Vidura, among other things, Vidura's expert at evaluating as a preacher. It really helps to be able to evaluate. And it's not so, it's a skill which has to be cultivated, and it takes time to really estimate and in terms of subtleties of the person you're dealing with. Yeah. When I was a new devotee, a very new devotee, we had one boy who was a character. We had quite a few boys who were real characters, my gosh. So anyway, this one boy, he had faith in the chanting of the holy names. Yeah, in a certain sense he did. So whatever you'd ask him, he'd say, chant Hare Krishna. What's the time? Chant Hare Krishna. What's for prasadam today? Chant Hare Krishna. It was a mantra. That was a mantra. Yeah, so, yeah. And he would sometimes preach to people. Take a guess what he'd tell them. Chant Hare Krishna, which of course is right. It's good. It's not like you're saying the wrong thing. But if you want to really preach effectively, and of course you've got to introduce people to chanting Hare Krishna, no doubt, but you've got to do it scientifically, effectively. Yeah. And you may have to take them to develop the discussion and even develop the relationship in certain respects before you can really seriously get them into chanting Hare Krishna. So, yeah. So Vidura, he can evaluate, he can judge how to preach to someone. And this is what he's done or doing or done with Dhritarashtra. Yeah. So, of course, he knows real perfection is just to become a devotee, but he also knows that Dhritarashtra can't do it. So therefore he's just telling him, he's just clarifying that you are in a frustrating position, and you must get out of your ignorance and see the frustration and do something. Renounce, get out. Yeah. So the devotee, at least the devotee, even if the devotee leaves home and goes, wandering around the world and here and there and everything, but the devotee knows Krishna is with me. So the devotee is always comfortable, wherever he or she may be. Prabhupada says, one may live in the darkest jungle alone, but a steadfast devotee knows very well he's not alone. The Lord is with him. Right. Then, so, Prabhupada, being very philosophical, he brings up an important point that, so you should take to devotional service ultimately. At home, you should practice devotional service, and this will help you. But one who desires material benefit by such devotional activities can never depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he sits in everyone's heart. Yeah, because the person's depending on material things. I've got my bank balance, and when danger comes, I will pull out my bank statement and hold it in front of me, and that will protect me. See? You can't get me. I'll take my credit card and hold it up. See? But that won't work. Fallible soldiers. Yeah. So, and Prabhupada says, nor does the Lord give any direction to persons who worship him for material gain. They may get material benefits, but they cannot actually reach the real stage of proper, fully developed human life. Right. And there are many examples of such sincere devotees in the history of the world, especially in India, and they're our guides on this. And Vidura is one such example of such a person. So I guess 28 then is the last verse in this section, is it? I guess so, yeah. So 28. Vidura concludes his preaching to Dhritarashtra. Please, therefore, leave for the north immediately without letting your relatives know, for soon that time will approach which will diminish the good qualities of men. Krishna, yes, okay. So Prabhupada makes the point. You can compensate for a life of frustration by becoming dhira or leaving home You don't have to have a farewell party with speeches and gifts and things. Just in the middle of the night, you just walk out. That's actually what Dhritarashtra is going to do. And in the morning, the Pandavas and everyone is going to wake up and just going to say, he's gone. Where'd he go? Who knows? Nobody knows. Anyway, we'll go through that over these next few days. So, right. So Vidura's telling Dhritarashtra that you should do this. Compensate for your life of frustration by becoming a dhira, by becoming very tolerant, and just get out, particularly before Kali Yuga begins. Because Kali Yuga is a dhira's nightmare, basically, you could say. Well, it's everybody's nightmare, but the majority of people don't think it's their nightmare. They think it's their dream. Happy days will be here. So, Srila Prabhupada introduces the term somewhere. Oh yeah, it's sort of in the middle of the purport, more or less, that ideally one should become a Narottam or Narottama. Nara Uttama. Nara means human being. Uttama means, in simple terms, it means the best. But Uttama literally means Uttama, above ignorance. That means a devotee. You should do that. So Vidura's instructing him to get out ASAP, like tonight, because Kali Yuga is really on its way. So Prabhupada explains that what does he say? Dhritarashtra was advised by Vidura at least to become a dhira in the beginning, if it were impossible for him to become a sannyasi or narottam. If you persistently endeavor, then you can be elevated from the stage of dhira to the condition of a narottam. Yeah. And Prabhupada makes interesting point that the dhira stage is attained after prolonged practice of the yoga system, but by the grace of Vidura, one can attain the stage immediately, simply by willing to adopt the means of the dhira stage, which is the preparatory stage for sannyas. And the sannyas stage is the preparatory stage of Paramahansa, or first grade devotee of the Lord. Actually, Paramahansa, strictly speaking, is the final stage of sannyas. There are 4 stages: Bahuda Kutichak, Paravrajakacharya, and then Paramahansa. And we, the way we deal with this is that we as sannyasis take up the way of life of Paravrajakacharya immediately. Yeah. Okay, let's do a little more. So the next section, verse 29 to verse 40, Dhritarashtra leaves home. Yeah, the crunch is coming. So what I'll do, because I'm going to finish around 7, not necessarily go on to 7:15, I'll read the translations as we normally do for this series of verses, so we can just see what's going on. So, 29, thus, Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the scion of the family of Ajamedha, firmly convinced by introspective knowledge, pragya, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation, as directed by his younger brother Vidura. Verse 30. The gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of King Subal of Kandahar, or Gandhar, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of the renounced order, like fighters who have accepted a good lashing from the enemy. 31. Maharaj Yudhisthira, whose enemy was never born, because they left, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, and Vidura left also, but as far as I understand, he didn't exactly go with them, but he left. So, but they left in the middle of the night. So now Maharaj Yudhisthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice to the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmins. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles or aunt, the daughter of King Subal. Verse 32, Maharaj Yudhisthira, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjaya, who was sitting there, and said, "O Sanjaya, where's our uncle who's old and blind?" Sanjaya, this is the same Sanjaya from Bhagavad Gita. He's the secretary, still the secretary of Dhritarashtra. So there's no purport there. Yudhisthira continues, "Where's my well-wisher Uncle Vidura and Mother Gandhari, who's very afflicted due to all her sons' demise? My uncle Dhritarashtra was also very mortified due to the death of all his sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly I'm ungrateful. Did he therefore take my offences very seriously, and along with his wife drown himself in the Ganges?" 34. When my father Pandu fell down, and we were all small children, these two uncles gave us protection from all kinds of calamities. They were always our good well-wishers. Alas, where have they gone from here? Of course, this is Yudhisthira speaking, and he's just very benevolent, and he's like Brahmana is broad-minded. He is rarely broad-minded. Actually, Dhritarashtra tried to have him killed in different ways after the death of Pandu. But still, Yudhisthira is so nice. He says that they Vidura, of course, but including Dhritarashtra, they were always our goodwill wishers. 35. Sutta Goswami said, because of compassion and mental agitation, Sanjaya, not having seen his own master Dhritarashtra, was aggrieved and could not properly reply to Maharaj Yudhisthira. 36. First he slowly pacified his mind by intelligence, and wiping away his tears and thinking of the feet of his master, Dhritarashtra, he began to reply to Maharaj Yudhisthira. Oops. Right, okay. Reply to Yudhisthira. Sanjay, 37. Sanjay said, my dear descendant of the Kuru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles and Gandhari. O king, I have been cheated by those great souls. 38. While Sanjaya was thus speaking, Sri Narada, the powerful devotee of the Lord, appeared on the scene, carrying his tumburu. Maharaj Yudhisthira and his brothers received him properly by getting up from their seats and offering obeisances. 39. Maharaj Yudhisthira said, O godly personality, I do not know where my two uncles have gone, nor can I find my ascetic aunt, who is grief-stricken by the loss of all her sons. 40. You are like a captain of a ship in a great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination. Thus addressed the godly personality Devarshi Narada, greatest of the philosopher devotees, began to speak. That's the end of that section. So anyway, tomorrow night we'll go through the verses and the purports. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.